We are about to embark on an immersive journey through the corridors of our minds. Stand by as we prepare for departure.
Welcome aboard, everyone, to the Productivity with Peace of Mind podcast adventure. Our journey will begin in just a moment. Inhale deeply and exhale. Our voyage takes us on a captivating tour, diving deep into the intricate layers of our thoughts and imagination. Brace yourselves for the complexities of our evolution. For a safe and enjoyable journey, stay seated, secure your helmet and protective goggles, and keep hands, feet, and legs inside while the ride is moving. Now relax and enjoy.
What if I told you that to get anywhere you want in life, you have to actually first figure out where you are now? So you really have to meet yourself where you're at in order to then build your map and figure out where you want to go and how you're going to get there. That's what we're going to take a look at in today's episode. Today's special guest is none other than my mother, Jackie Hanson. Jackie earned a bachelor's degree in applied psychology with a minor in human relations. After starting a family of her own, she returned to college to obtain an elementary education teaching degree for grades 1 through 6, and later pursued a master's degree in special education for kindergarten through 12th grade. In her current role at SCRED, she specializes in deaf and hard of hearing education. She enhanced her qualifications by earning a birth through 21 deaf and hard of hearing teaching degree and passing the sign language interview. She is a member of the Early Hearing Detection Intervention (EHDI) committee, has chaired the regional deaf and hard of hearing community of practice, and currently chairs the SCRED Continuing Education Committee. With 20 years of experience, Jackie enjoys her role as a teacher of the deaf, learning from her students and continuously improving access for the deaf community. She is passionate about ensuring everyone has access to language. Her favorite pastime is enjoying outdoor activities such as hiking, biking, kayaking, swimming, cross-country skiing, and snowshoeing. She and her husband have 2 daughters. I'm one of them. One in Pine City and the other in Colorado, and 2 chihuahuas. So just want to give you a moment to introduce yourself and say hello and share anything else on your background.
Like she said, Jackie Hanson, first and foremost, mother of 2 beautiful, successful daughters. And I do teach students who are deaf or hard of hearing. So I enjoy my job. I enjoy working with the students. They teach me a lot. I'm really lucky and blessed to have a job where I really enjoy the work that I do and I'm passionate about it.
Yeah, and it's really cool. Like I've always said, the work you do is so special because and and just what you get to continue to teach of the what we're going to talk about today on lifelong learning. And I feel like because of who you are, I got to learn about resilience and grit and hard work and never giving up and continually learning until our last breath. That's what you've embodied.
Well, I do learn a lot from my girls and my students.
Yeah.
That's really where I get the bulk of my knowledge.
Yeah. Well, I think that's a good point because I don't know if you've heard of this thing called 360 leadership, but it's like you lead up, you lead down, you lead to the left, to the right. And so being able to learn from every direction, like from people younger than us, behind us, in front of us, right? At every
Mhm.
level, we learn so much more
Mhm.
because of that, because we're not just like, oh, I'm ahead of you, I know better,
Mhm.
right? It's like, no, everyone from every angle has something to teach everybody else.
Yes. And I work with students who, like you said, are birth to senior in high school.
Yeah.
And I take the things that my seniors teach me and I bring it back to the little ones.
Oh,
And I
that's cool.
explain that, you're not alone. And this works best for some kids and you might be different. And you have to figure out what works best for you.
Yeah. Oh, that's really cool. I love that, like, full circle of
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
bringing that back.
Definitely. Yeah.
and
I tell them,
leveraging.
yeah, I'm not really the teacher here.
Oh, but you're a great guide, though. You are a really great teacher.
Thanks.
So, can you share with us what initially drew you into becoming a teacher of the deaf and hard of hearing, and how your teaching career and journey has evolved?
Oh gosh, it's a long story. But I actually I started just with the elementary ed degree because you and Abby were going into elementary and I started to volunteer in the classrooms and I thought it
Yeah.
was really fun and I
Yeah.
thought, oh my gosh, I think this is something I could do. And then while I was teaching in North Branch, an opportunity came where they had a program that you could enroll in and get your certificate for special education. So I thought, gosh, that would really also help me in the classroom with the little ones that I'm working with and give me another perspective and learning that differentiation for learning.
Yeah.
And so I got through that program. And then as I was exiting that program, a job opened up at the St.
Mhm.
Croix River Ed District, or SCRED,
It's
as
great.
you
Yeah.
referred to it as. Um, that was for Teach of the Deaf. And they actually approached me and I said, gosh, I really don't know a lot about deaf and hard of hearing. I didn't, there was only probably a paragraph in my special education
Yeah.
book about deaf and hard of hearing. So I said, I I think I would like to try this at least. I'm going to
Yeah.
give it a year.
Yeah.
And I took some classes and I really, really liked it.
Mhm.
And I liked the fact that I wasn't stuck in one building all day. And not to be stuck,
Right.
but it's just I really like moving and
Yeah.
going and being with a lot of different people and having a lot of things going on all the time. And this really gave me that. So I entered into that program. And as I was in the program, I was teaching
Mhm.
at the same time.
Yeah.
They wanted to give that a try for me as well as me to them.
Yeah.
So I have not looked back. It's just
Mm.
I love it. I love the job. I love the students, everything.
Yeah. That's super
Yeah.
cool.
And I learn every day. There's not a day where I don't learn something. Never.
Yeah. Well, and you touch on something important too within what you're saying and within what happened with your story is this isn't just about learning about things outside of us and things that interest us, but it's also about learning ourselves. And you knew I like the movement
Hmm.
of varying sceneries throughout the day or varying locations and
Yeah.
going from place to place and being on
Yeah.
the move versus sitting still. And I actually learned that from
Hmm.
you, like seeing you live that out as I was growing into myself. Oh, I want that. So you kind of led by example for me too,
Hmm.
because I now have a similar, flexibility and mobility and moving from location to
Yeah.
location, driving here, flying there,
Hmm.
sitting in a coffee shop or sitting in a store. And it gives me also that mobility and not feeling like, oh, I'm isolated to one location all day.
Yeah.
Some people might like that. So
And the
knowing what we like.
Yeah. And the drive between locations gives you
Mhm.
time to process,
Yeah.
process what you just learned, process what you're going to be walking
Yeah.
into.
Yeah. Right. It's like
Mhm.
automatic buffer time,
Yeah.
automatic thinking and processing
Yeah.
time.
Hmm.
Yeah. I love that. As someone who values education and learning and who has pursued multiple degrees, how has that then shown up in your approach to teaching and learning in life?
Well, I didn't intend to get all those degrees. And really, if you would have asked me when I was 17, would I be doing that? I would have said no.
Yeah.
I don't know, things just fall into your lap, and I think you
Yeah.
just need to take a really good look at things and say, is this something I want to do? Is this something I can do or want to do?
Mhm.
And give it a try. Give things a try.
Yeah. Yeah, I like that. And I think not even realizing it, but that's something I think I've picked up from you too, because I've kind of always followed these little nudges and, maybe taken like a not so traditional path, but it's served me well
Yeah.
because I'm always really happy in what I'm doing and I'm actually
Yeah.
following what I'm interested in versus
Good.
what I think I'm supposed to do. Well, I didn't start that way, but I pivoted eventually and started going my own way, you know.
Mhm.
How do you incorporate these principles of lifelong learning and the continual education, especially like within ourselves, like continuing to push ourselves to keep learning within your students and teach them to, take that on? And how does that show up in your teaching?
Oh yeah, it looks way different than how I went through life, but it's more making learning interesting, and it's more about that. And even when you and Abby were little,
Mm-hmm.
it it was always for me a challenge to find, well, how can I help them learn and make it fun?
Yeah.
How can I make it motivating? How can I do this for my family and for my students? And I'm always wanting to learn more, even now that I'm
Yeah.
teaching, because I want to find a new lesson,
Yeah.
a better way to teach something. I want to help kids want to learn.
Yeah.
And that, to me, that is very important. And also I feel like the students that I work with, they have to be invested.
Right.
So when they get older and they're in transition, I ask them, is this of value to you? Because if it isn't, we need to do something else.
Yeah.
You need to be invested in this too. You need to have a say, because it's not for me to go around telling people you need to learn this and you need to learn
Yeah.
that. And they need to know why they're learning what they're
Mhm.
learning, and they need to have a part of it.
Yeah. Well, that's huge because if they are not interested in it, even if you sit and like force them and hold them down, like, you got to learn this, it's not going to stay in their memory anyway because they're just like checked out. So I like that piece about, having them invested. And I'm sure with all the different personalities out there from childhood to adulthood, that is a big piece of it, is understanding what actually is exciting for me,
Mhm.
right? Like asking ourselves that and understanding, like you ask your students, but even like us as adults, like asking ourselves, what
Mhm.
will make it fun for me? What will make it exciting for
Mhm.
me so that I do stay engaged
Mhm.
and keep going?
Or sometimes you might need to break it down into smaller
Right.
pieces, or do something fun along the way,
Yeah.
or
Right. Right.
if it's a hard part of your learning process.
Hmm. Right. Yeah. Because we're not going to enjoy every step of the way. There's
Right.
there's parts of it that
You'd have to work.
we're just not going to like it.
Sometimes you have to work.
Yeah. Yeah. And maybe you like celebrate with a nice dinner at the end.
And maybe there's an intrinsic reward at the end too.
Yeah.
I learned this. I know
Yeah.
this now, and I'm a better reader, or I'm a better writer, or
Right.
I'm better at signing, or whatever it is.
Hmm.
They have a new skill now
Right.
that
And
they can
that's
be proud of.
right. Right. And it snowballs because now you have this new skill, you're proud of it, you're experiencing this, your confidence goes up, you're showing up in a different way,
Mhm.
right? That's,
Mhm.
I mean, I can imagine that just snowballs.
Yeah.
Some of the core values for me that I mentioned earlier that you've taught me have been around resilience and never giving up and having that perseverance to always keep going. That failure never means we have to stop, it just means we learn something and we keep going. Do
Mhm.
you have any good stories or experiences that you've been through that kind of show that or play that out or kind of explain how resilience shows up for you?
I think so. There's one thing that it it comes to my mind right now, and I haven't really thought about this until you just asked me this, but I had to learn sign language at, oh gosh, I started this job when I was 35. So that's a little old to learn a new language. And sign
Yeah.
language is a whole language all of its own.
Yeah.
And uh it wasn't easy.
Yeah.
So it took me a long time to learn it. And I worked with many mentors. I had to pass an interview test with a panel. There are, I think, 6 interviewers that I had to sign for, and one person that I was interviewing with.
Mm-hmm.
And it took me several tries to pass that test.
I remember that.
So I really wanted to do that though, because I really like my job, and I really also wanted to make a difference for the students.
Yeah.
And I'm going to just admit that I'm still not perfect, but I did come a long way, and it felt good. It felt good to know that and to have that skill when I was done. And I am happy to be able to communicate with deaf people now and my students, and be able to teach them that skill as well.
Yeah. I remember how exciting that was. And you're right, like just being like, oh my gosh, I finally made it.
Mm-hmm.
That knowing and that feeling inside of you of that almost self-pride of like, I did this.
Mm-hmm.
And it didn't come easy.
Mm-hmm.
Like sometimes the easy things are like, oh,
Yeah,
you don't even appreciate it.
right. And I mean, I did fail and I felt bad a couple of
Mhm.
times, but I really studied what I did wrong.
Mm.
I really dove in, and I got new mentors, and I just kept working at it, and
Yeah.
I kept practicing. I kept watching videos. I kept doing everything I could to be able to get more experience,
Yeah.
and it paid off in the end.
And it sounds like you also had such a strong, solid why that you knew exactly what you were doing and why. Like you had
Mhm.
this vision that it almost sounds like it wasn't even a question of like,
Mm-mm.
what, like, why would I give up? This is my end goal.
Mhm.
I want to help my students.
Yeah.
I want to communicate with them so I can get to that next level with them.
Yeah.
Right.
Right.
That's so
Right.
cool.
Yeah.
I love that. That's a really good example.
Yeah. And I live in a really very rural area,
Mhm.
and to reach these kids, it's hard. It's hard to find people that do this job. So
Yeah.
I wanted to be able to have that skill
Yeah.
and that knowledge to be able to communicate with them fully,
Yeah.
even though most of the students I work with do have residual hearing,
Mm.
some to some level,
Yeah.
but some of them do need to use sign language as a visual so
Yeah.
that, you know, when they miss something, they still have access.
Right.
So that's really important to me.
Yeah. That's awesome. What would you say some of the unique challenges and rewards are of being a teacher of the deaf and hard of hearing?
Challenges, well, that is sometimes what I mentioned earlier about finding the right thing to
Mhm.
motivate a student, because there are just some students that I haven't figured out yet. And that's not to say that I am not in any way saying that they have a deficit. I'm saying that it's me. Like I need to find what works for them and what can help them reach their long-term goals. So
Yeah.
sometimes that is a challenge.
Yeah. So you're like finding creative ways for yourself to create that inclusive, supportive environment for each unique individual and how to almost like bridge the gap to where they are.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And sometimes it's not the student, sometimes it's a teacher that they work with every day.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes I have to reach that teacher or a parent or someone in order to help that student reach their goal.
Right. Well, yeah, that makes a lot of sense because you have to figure out where someone is in order to help them get to that end goal. And you can't build that path until you know those two endpoints.
Yeah,
And all of
exactly.
us start and end up in different places depending on our experiences. The support we've had, the experiences that we've seen, heard, said, done, etc.
Yeah.
One of the things that I've carried with me that you've taught me is this one's more of a almost a mantra or a self reminder of living in the middle of the road. And this is about finding not balance in the sense of I have to be right in the middle or 50-50 or any sense of perfection, but it's not living in one extreme or the other, like I often have and have kind of this natural tendency to, but I've been practicing this concept that you've taught me of living in the middle of the road for years. It's been hard, but I think that the importance of being able to set our boundaries but yet still be empathetic with others and flexible, it allows us to find that middle of the road in the sense of our relation to other people in a more compassionate, graceful way. So, how does that show up for you? Talk to us a little bit about how you've kind of found that middle of the road for yourself and how you've been able to practice your own version of empathy and flexibility while still having the boundaries that are important to you and what where you want to kind of stay in your space.
Yeah. So how do I set my, how do I, like an example of how I set my boundaries?
Yeah. Yeah. And stay in the middle of the road without being swinging from one end to the other, without living in the extremes.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think it takes a little bit of thoughtfulness, first of all. And I
Yeah.
think you need to just take a moment. I mean, I don't think you need to just say yes
Right.
to everything people are asking
Yeah.
you. I
Yeah.
think you can stop and just ask yourself, is this something that I want or is something that I can do?
Mm-hmm.
And then answer, because you want to be able to follow through
Mm-hmm.
on saying yes.
Mm-hmm.
Because otherwise you lose trust in people.
Yeah.
And I don't like that feeling. I mean, I want to build good relationships with the people that are close to me.
Yeah.
And especially like you and Abby, if
Yeah.
I do not ever want to tell you, yes, I'm going to do something and then have it fall through.
Yeah.
I don't want to be that person.
Right.
So yeah, I want to make sure that I'm there for you, but also I will probably, if I say no, I'll probably explain why,
Right.
because I want you to know that, yeah, I do want to do things for you and I want you to be happy and I want to help you with whatever you need help with, but it has to be within my capability.
Right. And what you have the space for.
Yes.
Right. Because even if we're capable of something, that doesn't mean we should say yes. It's
Right.
like, do you have the capacity
Yeah.
as well?
Right.
Right. And like, so I remember I was driving, I think I was in my yoga teacher training years ago, and I was driving in the dark and on the road, and the roads were icy. I was in the middle of a blizzard, and I called you pretty near panic, probably. And like what you said that to me was just stay in the middle of the road, right? And that's kind of my visual that I keep. And when you talk about, setting those boundaries and being really realistic, I think that it keeps our car in the middle of the road. Because if we say, oh yeah, I can do it, and we don't have the capacity, like we might be capable, but if we don't have the capacity, we're going to crash the car. Right. And if we or vice versa, if you say just slam on the brakes, you're like, no, I can't do anything for you, whether you're capacity, capable, whatever, and you just shut down and you don't stay engaged, you're also going to lose control of the vehicle.
Right.
How would you say your ability to have really strong time management skills has contributed to your own success?
And this might be where I need to be in the middle of the road, but I do like to check things off my list.
Yeah, me too. I got that from you.
And I kind of like to plan out my days.
Yeah.
I kind of like to plan out my long-term goals. and just kind of, check things off as I go.
Yep.
So I think that always making a plan for me is been helpful for me, but I don't think I would say that that's a good thing for everybody to do, because sometimes you need to be able to let that list go, and you need to be able to be flexible,
Yeah.
and you need to be able to say, if it's not working out, like, for example, if I'm with a student and we're working on a lesson and I have a
Yeah.
goal to get to and I want to check things off, and they're not in a place to complete whatever it is we're working on, I need to be able to say, this isn't working today. What do you need to be able to get this done?
Yeah.
And I think that is super important for the student to continue their learning and
Yeah.
their work toward their goal, and me as a teacher, because neither of us are going to get to where we need to be if I keep pushing toward that goal and I don't address what's on the table today. If they have an issue that they need to deal with, or if they have a problem that's on their mind, we need to get through that first.
Right. Well, it's almost a separation of, okay, here's what's in my control that I can plan for, and here's where I'm going to let go, or schedule in my own space for learning, right? To like be more open of like, okay, I can control what's, in my controllables. Like we've talked about that, like our controllables, and then I'm going to surrender to the outcome and make my next plan from there versus I think the attachment of like, oh, it has to be this, because I know I was that way for years, and I had to learn to let go of the attachment, I guess, to what was going to happen. Because when things didn't go my way, then I would just lose it and be so upset with myself or other people.
Yeah, I think it's important to be able to say, it's okay if you don't get the things checked off your list today.
Yeah.
I mean, it's okay it's also okay to plan. And there you have the middle of the road.
Yes. So good. So we talked a little bit already on like your strong ability, and I think this is where time management actually is really strong for you, is you don't say yes to what you cannot commit to or not willing to commit to. So I want to talk about that a little bit with you and how that shows up for you and how you have the ability to know so strongly within yourself, and like how can we know what to say yes to, because there's things that, you know, maybe there's something you don't actually really want to do, but you love somebody and you want to help them, you genuinely want to help them, and they ask for a request and you're like, I don't really want to do that, but I actually want to help you. So in a sense you do want to do it. But then there's also things where you're like, that's just not something that I'm going to feel good showing up for and doing. How do we differentiate, and how do we build that muscle to actually get good at that if we're not good at saying yes when we mean it and saying no when we mean no?
Well, I think it's really important just to be thoughtful about it and really think through and try to visualize how you're being helpful to someone, and what can you give that person if you really love them and you really want to help them, but you can't do the thing. What can you do?
Yes.
Or how can you help them? Or can you just be there as a mental support for them?
Yeah.
I think there are ways that you can do it. But also, if you are going to follow through on something, try to visualize yourself doing it and why you want to do it.
Okay.
Is it for you, or is it because you feel like you should do it? I think that it's important to understand the why behind something.
Okay. So like know your purpose and be honest with yourself about that. And then also walk yourself through those steps of like, okay, what will this actually feel like? Will I be resentful at the end?
Just try to visualize the process of whatever it is that you're doing with someone.
Yeah. Or considering helping with. Okay. That's good. I think it's been just absolutely amazing as our relationship has evolved, from like parent child to both being adults, and now I consider you one of my like best friends and mentors in life, what would you say to other parents or mentors or teachers who have students or children and they are looking at the evolution of their relationship and how that can show up in the best way for them long term?
Parents or mentors or whoever you are, you have to consider that the person next to you, child, student, whoever, they are a separate person. They are their own person.
Yeah.
It's just really important to consider that the fact that the individual that you are with is there, they are an individual.
Yeah.
They have their own personality, they have their own mind, and they will be the person that they want to be. And
Mhm.
in and of that, they are successful.
Yeah.
It's not what you envision for them.
That's so good.
Yeah. You cannot ever have a vision of someone else and try to mold them into that person.
Right.
They are a success on their own.
Right. Because success is our own definition of what we want and living into that.
Yes.
Not meeting someone else's
Yes.
expectation.
Right.
As much as we think we know, it's so hard. And I mean, I'm saying this, I'm not a teacher and I do not have kids, but in life, I tend to think, I know what's best for other people. We don't. We really don't. We are not in their brain. We are not in their body to know.
Yeah. And I think you said earlier, you have to start from where they are at.
Yeah.
And that's what we're doing here.
Yeah.
We're finding out what another person is good at, what their successes are, what their interests are. And then you work from there.
Right. And they trust you more because you've allowed them the space to grow versus attempting to put them in a cage that they're just going to break out of anyway.
And you can guide people. You can guide them and you can be there for them, but you have to let them be their own person.
Yeah.
And being there as a support and listening.
Yeah.
And just however they need you and you show up as that person or that thing.
Yeah.
That's what's important.
I can hear you saying to me over the years through numerous difficult life experiences saying, I can't do this for you, but I want you to know you always have a choice. And I think that empowered me to then go figure out who am I versus, it can be so easy to be like, oh, do this, but we don't know.
Yeah. And that's why I told you, the more knowledge you have, the more power you have, because when you have more knowledge about something, you realize that you have more choices.
Yes. Right. It's like turning the lights on.
Yeah.
And I think just for me, one of my struggles in life is feeling like the lights are off in a lot of different situations. And so my lifelong learning is a great partner to turning the lights on for myself. It's kind of that self-advocation of I'm going to get to know me and my world and what works for me.
Yeah.
And I got that from you.
Oh, good.
And then we'll wrap it up with a final question that a little bit aligns with the one we just talked about. But what would you say to whether it's a teacher or a mentor or a parent in how they can continue to instill that lifelong learning into their students, children, mentees, teams, etc.?
Oh, I think the biggest thing is you have to be a role model. You have to be a good role model.
Yeah.
And if you want to teach someone how to be successful, you have to teach them and show them what they're good at. When I work with students, a lot of times the first things that we start with are, what are their strengths? What are you good at? What do you
Yeah.
like to do?
Yeah.
Even if it's a little kid, we talk about, okay, well, Thomas the Train is your favorite? Awesome. What do you do with Thomas?
Yeah. Yeah.
It's just, you have to start again with where they are
Yeah.
and work from there, be a support to them, listen to them. Setting boundaries is sometimes part of that, especially
Yeah.
with younger children.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you have to set some boundaries,
Mm-hmm.
but again, too, back to the emotional piece, if there's something they're working on and
Yeah.
there's something that's bothering them, they might have to get through that before they can get to the next step of their learning too. So
Oh,
that's another
right.
piece of it.
Yeah, like letting them go at their pace
Yeah. Mhm.
versus our pace. Because we've already done it. When we're teaching something, we've already learned it.
Yeah.
And we want to be like, oh, it's just this.
Yeah.
Just get it.
Yeah, it's not that simple. It's not as
No.
simple as telling
No.
someone, you do this, 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 and this, and then there you are. No.
Right.
You have to work through those steps as they are ready.
Right. I know there were so many things as I was younger, like looking back. So I'll experience something now in my adult years. And then I'll realize and count all the way back to childhood, like, oh, my mom planted the seed when I was 8, like these are things I would hear you saying. And then, we've talked about layers of learning where as I got older and I then experienced it, your words were the seeds. Every experience and outcome and my reaction and their reaction, et cetera, is the water, the soil, the fuel. And all of a sudden I have a tree. But it takes all of that to get there. It doesn't just take, hey, guess what? Here's a, hey, drive in the middle of the road, right? And I'm like, what? But it takes all of that to put it together and really realize what it means for us in our own way.
Yeah. Right. Each person is an individual, and each individual is going to go through life in a different way. So we need to really be aware that we all have different strengths. Everybody has strengths. Everybody does. Even if there's someone you think you might not like, they still have strengths.
Yes.
There's still something they can work with.
Always. Well, this has been absolutely incredible. You shared so much wisdom on this episode, and I just want to wrap it up. I know I said that was the last question, but what would you say is one thing everybody listening to this can go do right now to become more aware with themselves or more aware in a relationship they have with somebody else?
Just know that everyone is their own individual.
Yeah.
And again, they may not go through life the same way you did. You can't expect people to experience life the same way you did.
Yeah.
Everyone is different. And find out what is good about each individual person. Take time to find out, because there's a lot to learn from other people. A lot.
Yes. That's for
Kids
sure.
included. I have a lot of knowledge from the little ones I work with.
I bet. Oh, that's awesome. Well, truly thank you so much for doing this with me and being here today. I cannot thank you enough. I know that this will provide a lot of value for those listening. Thank you for braving the inside of your mind with me. The better we understand ourselves, the more deeply we understand the world, and as our awareness grows, life just gets better and better. If you've enjoyed this episode, please take a moment to leave a review and share this with anyone else you think could benefit from listening. A quick reminder that the content shared in this podcast is for informational purposes only. I am not a licensed therapist, and the discussions here are not a substitute for professional advice. If you're dealing with a specific issue or need personalized guidance, please consult with a qualified professional. Your well-being is important, and this podcast is simply a platform for sharing insights and experiences. I appreciate you spending this time with me. Until next time.